Today's video is brought to you by Extra, ladies and gentlemen. Have you ever been made fun of on a date by having a bifold wallet? Well, run away, because those are red flags. But ladies and gentlemen, I want to talk about a wallet that is, quite frankly, in my opinion, one of the best smart wallets out on the market, and I've been using it for over a month at this point. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a super slim, super sleek, minimalistic wallet, which I guess is all the rage these days, considering it's half the size of a conventional bifold wallet. It stores up to 12 cards in cash, and with sweet RFID protections going on, because wireless theft is a thing, you can actually hit this little tab on the bottom and start to witness your cards one by one, protected by RFID protection right here. You probably shouldn't slam it like that, but hey, who cares? It's high quality, environmentally friendly, if you will, with high quality metals such as Italian leather, space grade aluminum, and even, for the daring, carbon fiber. Have any of you ever dirtied your diaper by accidentally losing your wallet? I know I have, okay? The amount of calls I've made to banking services and card companies about, cancel the card, please cancel. Well, with a solar power tracking device that powers itself by just 2 hours in the sun, giving you 3 months of charge, roughly, you actually end up getting two-way ringing. So if you ever lose your phone, for instance, there's a cool little card up here. You tap it twice, and would you look at that? My phone's telling me I lost it. Not anymore. And of course, I've even talked about how it's ease of access, speedy paying, and no more looking like an idiot at the cash register, looking through which card you want to pay. It's very quick, efficient. And of course, with time as being so important in our life, being as speedy as we can is quite honestly the most important thing. That said, if you're interested in Extra's wallet and you want to save some money, check out our affiliate link and use our code below, SOG. Hello guys and gals, me Mutahar, and I didn't get a Steam Deck. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I, like many people, tried to order the Steam Deck. 30 seconds later, I was in Q2. Some of you guys are in Q3, some people are way beyond that. Of course, Steam Decks are rolling out, and I'm not dogging Valve for anything. There's a supply chain crisis, and we're slowly easing out of it, and frankly, I'm pretty sure all the influencers and the reviewers probably had to get theirs first. You know, it is what it is. Now, I had two options, okay? I could go online to the magical world of scalp eBay, and I could type in the word Steam Deck. I could do that until I found out they're scalping it hard, okay? I'm telling you right now. All right, the financial fisting you can get from buying a mid-range Steam Deck is somewhere around the ballpark of $1,000 and above, okay? $1,500. I've seen people stupid enough to charge $2,000 for it. J Fuel smiley face. Is it worth it? No. The inanimate object said, no indeed. So I decided I'm going to build my own Steam Deck. I'm going to build the Mutadeck, all right, ladies and gentlemen? Because frankly, I like to play games portably, you know what I mean? Like, who doesn't like to play some No Man's Sky on the toilet? I know I do, and I'm not waiting till the Nintendo Switch version comes out that runs at 480p at 15 frames per second. No, I'm going to play it right now and almost nearly lock 60. Now, remember a while back when I talked about the old-fashioned GPD Win 3? I basically said it was like that bootleg Steam Deck device, and this is it right here, the GPD Win 3. Now, since then, I've actually decided to put more money down on likewise products, and I think I found the one that I actually enjoy. Now, I'm not sponsored by anybody here, let me tell you right now, aside from what you saw at the beginning of the video. I still had to put $1,000 down on pretty much both of these, okay? Now, this is the Aya Neo Pro. If you go to their actual website, I think they're on the Aya Neo Next or something. They release this stuff every year. And just to also mention, there's also things like the One X player, which actually provides both an AMD version of their system and an Intel version of their system. I didn't get my hands on this. I wasn't really interested in it because, frankly, when you look at the amount of processors that they're putting in and the types of them, you can actually see that they're using the same processors as each other. So really it comes down to which brand, I guess, you prefer. At the end of the day, it really just matters about the chipset and how the build quality and really how they cool these things down. I've never touched one of these, but I figured since we're looking at this entire industry, it's fair to show every single brand out there. Now, these are handheld gaming PCs, and much in the vein of the Steam Deck, they're handheld gaming PCs that aren't necessarily designed to be the most graphically pushing systems, but if you consider it, it's a handheld device that, frankly, doesn't get too hot to the touch. I mean, it doesn't feel like the surface of the sun or anything, and it's got about a 2.5 hour battery life that you can get some pretty decent gaming done on the way. It's kind of like having a Switch with actual capabilities, so you can play much more demanding games than what the Switch offers. Hell, you can even emulate the Switch on some of these devices too, but we'll get to that in a bit. Now, ladies and gentlemen, picking between either or device really comes down to personal preference. The GPD Win has a cool little touch keyboard, which I mean, it's good for entering things in, but anything other than that, good luck. But the Aya Neo just comes with a larger screen, a simpler form factor, and no slidey keyboard. That said, though, it's really up to whatever you want to pick, okay? It is what it is. Now, the Steam Deck, while it runs a custom version of GNU Linux from, Valve, it's actually just an Arch-based Linux distribution. Now, because Valve has been developing something known as Proton, which allows you to run a lot of Windows games natively within Linux at pretty much near compatibility, as long as those games don't have invasive DRMs or crazy deep anti-cheats that are frankly incompatible, it almost just feels like you're playing a game on Windows. Now, because of the Steam Deck's popularity, a lot of people are actually playing games on Linux because of the Steam Deck. Now, that being said, the Steam Deck has some benefits, like, for instance, the suspend start feature, which allows you to just close the system off like a Nintendo Switch, jump right back into it, and a pretty kick-ass user interface. It actually has made the entire act of gaming on Linux an almost breeze for people. A lot of people probably don't even know the Steam Deck runs Linux. They just know that as soon as they fire it up, they sign into Steam, they buy a game, they launch it, and that's pretty much how it works. But ladies and gentlemen, what if you could take SteamOS 3, and maybe run it on a device like this? Maybe in the future make your own Steam Deck. Because with the success of the Steam Deck, I don't doubt that Microsoft, Razer, a bunch of these other companies that have the means as well, are going to start tapping into the market and releasing their own versions of Steam Decks around. Now, what about building the Mutadeck? Okay, now to understand, if you want to get SteamOS has been here for a few years. When Valve started making Steam machines, like with Alienware back in the day, where you could basically buy a gaming PC, but more consoleized from Valve, never really took off, never really did anything spectacular with it, and that was before the days where Valve had the ability to use Proton to run a majority of Windows games natively underneath Linux, right? Now, within this page, you can actually download the recovery image from Valve themselves. Now, of course, by accepting it, you can download that Steam Deck image. It's about 2 gigabytes, 6 gigabytes unpacked, and you can actually use this to fix your Steam Deck if it's broken. But because this is Linux, and because the Steam Deck is just a computer, you can actually run the operating system for yourself. So once you download this and you basically unpack it and convert it into a VDI file using VirtualBox, you can actually create a virtual machine by basically giving it around, I would say, 16 gigabytes of memory. 8 will do fine. Giving it EFI privileges, because this is a UEFI-based operating system. Go into the processes, give it around as many threads as you want. I gave it 16 just for emulating. And of course, you can give it some virtualized graphics. Not that you'll be doing much gaming underneath this. So again, once you hit OK and hit start, we're going to look at what SteamOS 3 looks like. So here it is, it's firing up, bam, bam, we've got Linux here, ladies and gentlemen. Now it comes with Firefox, it comes with 4 scripts that allows you to clear the user data, re-image the Steam Deck, and reinstall the Steam operating system. And plus you got a terminal with repair tools as well. But of course over here you can actually browse the internet. A lot of those internet features work because it is just Linux, guys. If you actually click on the little deck here, type in terminal, you can actually see that this is in fact KDE Plasma, the same desktop environment I use on my home Linux distro anyway. So if I type in uname, you'll notice that it says Steam Deck 5.13.0. So it's a little older kernel in the recovery image. For instance, if I open up an actual Linux, distribution that I'm using, and I type in uname, you can see that I'm on version 5.17.4. So this is Valve's version of their kernel. This has their patches, their enhancements to the Linux kernel itself. Now again, we can actually try running this on these devices as well. Not to say we're ever going to get super successful. Frankly, the Steam recovery image is not exactly a full installation of SteamOS 3, meaning that if you were to try running it on the Aya Neo, you'd probably just get a black screen like I did. Whereas if you tried running it on the GPD Win, you could actually make it all the way to the desktop environment. But of course, if you try to re-image your devices, because these are not Steam Decks, they have different hardware, it's probably not going to work. Even if I try attempting this within the virtual machine, it's just going to give me error upon error upon error. So that said, ladies and gentlemen, why should our memes just be dreams? What if we could actually make our own variant of the SteamOS? Because at the end of the day, this is just Arch Linux with a Steam coat of paint. Let's see if we can take it a step further and create our own variant of the SteamOS, the MutaOS, the Mutadeck, if we will. Look at all the cool wallpapers they have, though. Look at that. You got Steam Logo 2, you got Steam Logo 4, Steam Logo 5 looks... Steam Logo 5 looks awesome, dude. God damn. Now that said, though, that's not entirely interesting, okay? SteamOS Steam Deck image, okay? If you have a broken Steam Deck, that's how you get things going. Now, because this is, in fact, an Arch-based system, we're going to be using an Arch-based operating system. Now, you can go to Arch Linux and just download that and set it up on any of these devices if you actually wanted to. All it takes is a little bit of expertise, following a few instructions, and installing Arch Linux. But to make things easier, I'm going to go to manjaro.com. Now, manjaro.org, sorry. Manjaro is an actual Arch-based Linux distribution that actually is a lot more easier to use. It does a lot of stuff for you, and frankly, out of the box, if you want to experience Arch and you're just dipping your toes into Linux, this is probably the best distro that you can get. There are other ones out there, like EndeavourOS, but I typically started off with Manjaro, and then I just installed regular Arch and called it a day. Now, of course, you go to their download tab, and here they're going to give you a bunch of editions, okay? So you're going to look for the KDE Plasma one, because this is the desktop environment that the Steam Deck is actually using. Plus, KDE Plasma is fine. I know people have said it's a bloated desktop environment. It can't be more bloated than Windows 10, come on now. So anyways, you give it a download, you have the option. Do you want to get the regular or the minimal? Just go with the regular one. The minimal is basically just the operating system without really any of the software that comes with it. It's not too bloated one way or the other, just get the regular one. Now, when you get the regular operating system, go get an application known as Balena Etcher, which will allow you to actually burn the operating system ISO file that you just downloaded to an actual flash drive. So again, the application is Balena Etcher. If you're on Windows, you can use Balena Etcher. If you're on Mac, you can use Balena Etcher. Just use Balena Etcher. It's cross-platform and everyone can use it. But if you want to use Rufus or something else, that's entirely on you. Hell, if you want to use the command line, that's on you, dog. But Balena Etcher right over here, if you get things going, you can just select that image file right here, select your USB drive, and flash it, and within minutes, you'll be ready to go. So I know that I say just install Manjaro, it's really easy and I never really show you, but to understand just how actually easy it is, once you actually boot into the ISO file, you can click on the install Manjaro Linux thing right here on the desktop. Pretty much par for the course for most of these Linux installers. Now here you can pick your language. I'm going to go with American English. I'm going to pick Toronto. I'm going to pick my keyboard layout. Here on this system, you want to pick the hard drive you want to install to. Make sure you're not formatting something that you store on cold storage, like your games hard drive or something, because that will actually wipe it. It'll literally say, this will delete all data. Now, of course, at this point, you hit erase disk, and of course, you definitely want some hibernate in the situation as well, too. Just for this installation, I'm not going to bother. I'm just going to do swap ext4, hit next, and then you put in your name. So I'm going to put in Muda, and then I'm going to put in a password, 123, and of course, you can use the same password for the administrator account. Hit next, and then just hit that big install button. Hit it again, and you're good. You're done. You have to wait like a few minutes, and there it is, guys. You just installed Linux. You can boot into a fresh installation. Nope. No telling it to say no to a bunch of tracking features. It is what it is. This is that simple. Now, when you install Manjaro, you're going to be blessed with this screen right here. Now, of course, with a lot of these devices, if you can plug in a USB-C to an HDMI cord right here, you can basically output to any monitor. And basically, it's like having the Steam Deck's dock on you, right? You're basically connecting an external display to this device, and it basically serves as a secondary monitor. So again, this is what you're going to be seeing on a fresh Manjaro install. Again, this isn't very user-friendly, especially on a 7-inch screen. Navigating this with touch controls isn't going to be necessarily as easy as you might imagine. And nobody wants to have a keyboard and mouse connected to a deck. That defeats the whole purpose of portability. So again, one of the few things you're going to be doing, because it's Manjaro, you can actually install Steam, and it's actually right there to go. All you have to do is launch it once, go through a sort of download setup process, and then you can log in, and eventually you'll be at the Steam homepage. Now, I've kind of done a lot of these steps already, so I'm going to walk you through exactly what you want to do. Go to Steam, click on the Settings tab, and where you see Steam Play right here, there's going to be an option that says Enable Steam Play for all titles. You want to make sure that's checked, and you want to make sure Proton Experimental is picked. Once you do that, you'll be able to download any Windows game through Steam and be able to use it underneath your Steam Deck, okay, your Steam Deck clone. Now, again, that's not to say every single game will work here, and I'll get to that in a bit. If it comes to a single-player game like No Man's Sky in this test, you can actually run that and be relatively fine, because that works just fine with Proton in my testing. But let's say you wanted to run a game like Rainbow Six Siege. Rainbow Six Siege uses anti-cheat from BattlEye, which is incompatible with Proton. So this isn't like a catch-all solution. If you're going to be playing games that have anti-cheats like Rainbow Six or Destiny or Call of Duty Modern Warfare, you're going to have issues even getting those to run, because anti-cheat at the moment, a lot of them are not compatible with Linux. Very recently, games like Apex Legends just got the all clear, and you can play them using Linux. But at the moment, a grand majority of games that people are playing on multiplayer are just not functional. So once these games are all downloaded and ready to go, you can run them on the desktop just like you would a gaming PC if you have your deck connected to effectively just a monitor. But that's not portable. Let's get into making this portable, okay? So it seems like the actual UI for the Steam Deck is known as GameScope, all right, which comes with a lot of tools to navigate the menus and also to do power controls and just straight up controls on gameplay functionality on the Steam Deck. Now, here's an actual script that was made by a user known as Biased on GitHub, and this is a pretty sick script because this is how we were able to get a lot of the Steam Deck's functionality running within on these devices, most of them. There is one issue, and that's the lack of an on-screen keyboard. It doesn't really work too well, but there are mitigations around it that you can do. They're messy, but that's about the only issue that I personally had on the Ioneo. Now, that being said, to follow this is actually pretty easy. Now, here they can say that you can download the Steam version of their Linux, so their kernel. If you have enough space on your device, you can actually download this, compile it yourself. It'll take a while, and you can get a lot of the advancements from Valve's version of Linux, all right? Their enhancements, their kernel patches. We're not going to do that for this video. There are two prerequisites. One of them is enabling multilib, the repository in Pacman, so basically the package manager for any Arch-based system, because this script works with any Arch-based operating system, whether you use Arch Linux, whether you use Manjaro like we are, or you want to do this on the SteamOS 3 once it's launched, even though that would be redundant. So to do this, we want to make sure that we have multilib enabled. So open up a terminal here real quick. Just by going into the Start Terminal tab and just typing in, where it says console. And once you're in here, I'm just going to increase the size real quick. You want to do sudo for super user, nano for the actual text editor, etc pacman.conf. Now, once you're in here, you can actually scroll all the way down, and you want to make sure that multilib is enabled. So again, this is just if you want to run like 32-bit applications on a 64-bit OS. So again, we want to make sure this is enabled. If it's not enabled, it's actually going to look like this, where they actually have a little, pound signs. So that's a comment. So you want to get rid of all those comments. You want to make sure that this is going to be functional. Now, of course, with Manjaro, the next is installing Yay, which is an Arch user repository tool. So do sudo pacman-s for installation -S for installing the actual package, and type in the words Yay. Now you can install Yay, and at this point you can now move on to the next step, which is installing a lot of those Deckifier tools. So according to their actual installation, all you have to do is copy git clone, all right, which is basically the allowing you to clone that specific repository. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make directory test, and I'm going to cd into that just so I can actually create an environment to show you. So you type in git clone and that link exactly. So copy that, paste that in there, and once it's copied in, you want to do cd Deckifier to actually change directory into that downloaded, Git repository. And then you want to do chmod +x, and they say install.sh, but that doesn't actually exist. You actually have to change Deckifier.sh. And once you're done that, you do /Deckifier.sh --install, and everything should basically be fine. And finally, all you have to do now is run using this command. So steam-steamOS 3, steampal, Steam Deck, and Steam Gamepad UI. So all you can really do is copy that and just really paste it back over here, and you should be able to run this with the actual Steam Deck OS, the Steam Deck UI. Hit enter, it's going to verify installation, and then it's going to just initially launch it to begin with. Now again, there's a setup that you have to go through, and provided your hardware is functional and everything is fine, you should be able to install it and move on with your life. That said though, to further add these enhancements, you can also run Yay-S Linux SteamOS, Linux SteamOS headers, and Mesa SteamOS. This will give you the Linux, like Steam versions of their kernel, so you can actually get their enhancements and boot using that. It will give you some better compatibility, but I didn't do that for this video. Also, you need to make sure that you have some time and hard drive space because you're going to be doing a lot of compiling if you do that. So here it is. I've got the SteamOS, and we're going to just enter this, connect through, and you might get update errors depending on how you're doing it, but I didn't get update errors on my handheld device. So again, if it fails over here, you might need to wait for the script to be updated by the developer themselves, but that's just something that we're dealing with. Now, if you're also just on the desktop client, you can just do Steam and just do -gamepad UI. And if you just do that, you're actually able to use the SteamOS functionality with the Steam Deck UI on top. And as you hit enter, you can actually launch Steam Deck UI just on the PC, and you can actually use it like a Steam Deck system. So again, here's a Steam Deck gamepad UI just on a PC, and you can actually navigate it using your mouse, or if you want, your actual keyboard. Again, this is a beta version, and I wouldn't even recommend this if you want to use it for proper functionality. It's cool to play around with, but if you're on the PC, you can just use big picture mode. And honestly, if you're not really into just using the UI right now while it's an alpha, you can basically just use big picture mode on these handheld devices already. So anyways, in the end, what we basically did right now was we got a Steam Deck OS, a Steam interface, actually in some cases beyond just the interface, on other devices, other handheld PCs. Now, is it as good as a Steam Deck? No. These devices are a little weaker in terms of, power compared to a Steam Deck, actually in some cases pretty substantially. I think the Steam Deck is RDNA 2, whereas these are Vega integrated graphics. So you're going to have some discrepancy. I think CPU-wise, they outclass the Steam Deck, but very marginally. So that said, though, the gaming, on average, can be sometimes a few frames higher, and I think a lot of that is due to the fact that it was a fresh Linux installation, and I only had like 2 or 3 games that I was playing on it. Now, how is the gaming experience? Well, the Deck UI is there. It feels like a Steam Deck, and because hibernation is enabled on it and I actually configured it properly, yes, I can suspend the game properly. It's not as snappy as a Steam Deck, but I think it gets the job done. And the hibernation allows me to completely power down the device and fire it up later on when I just don't want to put it in suspend mode, okay? So again, the gaming is there. I was able to play a lot of my favorite titles on this device itself. So downloading it from Steam was no real problem. No Man's Sky worked really well. And beyond No Man's Sky, a lot of other titles from Steam just downloaded and played with no issues. Now, what if you wanted to play games beyond what's on Steam on the Deck device? Now, according to the Steam Deck systems, I believe they use Flatpak to actually run like a bunch of different programs on their devices. But because this is just a Linux system anyways, you can use something like Lutris to basically download other launchers and other Windows games from said launchers. So for instance, I want to play games like Mirror's Edge Catalyst. I didn't buy that on Steam. I bought that on EA Origins. So by using Lutris, I was able to download the EA app, install Origins, install the Mirror's Edge Catalyst, and basically have that running on the Steam Deck device. And lo and behold, it runs well. Games like Need for Speed run well. Games like Grand Theft Auto 5 running underneath Rockstar's game launcher works absolutely wonderfully. Now again, the frame rate's a little bit lower than what you get on the Steam Deck, but I'm going to chalk it up due to the fact that I am using inferior graphic cards, or an integrated GPU in this case, compared to the Steam Deck. Obviously, Valve is selling those Steam Decks at a bit of a loss, so they're obviously going to be putting them with higher grades of hardware, and it really does show. As far as the emulation capabilities on devices like these goes, because of the Linux operating system, you obviously have less resources that you're tapping into just from an OS level. So by downloading RetroArch, you're able to get a pretty good experience, I would say flawlessly, with Super Nintendo, N64, PlayStation 1, Game Boy Advance, even all the way up to the PSP. So that era of emulation doesn't really feel too wild. But when you move beyond that to PlayStation 2, I think we're at peak PS2 emulation. It works absolutely flawlessly on a device like this. And to be able to play games like The Warriors just flawlessly on these devices with a proper stripped down operating system that frankly isn't as bloated as something like Windows 10 or Windows 11 is an absolute treat. Want to play Dolphin? Want to play GameCube games? You absolutely can. Hell, if you're good enough, you can get CMU running well in advance onto it, and you can play Wii U titles, yes, Wii U titles, at playable, very good frame rates. I was able to play Xenoblade Chronicles X running on this device with no real problems. Games like Wind Waker HD. I don't even think I'm allowed to show it because Nintendo's ninjas are literally around the corner, and ain't nobody fucking with them. Now, beyond all of those devices over here, what about the real drawbacks? Now, I've noticed when it comes to the Steam Deck reviews, a lot of the channels have said, guys, we're not able to play games like Fortnite. We're not able to play games like Warzone. Oh God, Siege doesn't work, and that's a real issue. Because these are Linux-based devices, and trust me, Linux gaming has gotten so much better over the years, to the point where if you asked me a year ago that I could run games like Control with DLSS and ray tracing, I'd call you fucking crazy. I'd send you to the goddamn loony bin. But here we are today playing Control with ray tracing and DLSS, using Steam Proton's experimental bleeding edge client that has a bunch of extra fixes constantly being added to it like every week. So again, it's there. If all you play on games like Linux is just the occasional single player game, the single player focus game, most of them are working. Even the new ones are working literally day one out of the box in a lot of cases, in my experience. Games like Dying Light 2. And in some cases, if you're playing games that are pretty light on anti-cheat in terms of, how much they allow you, like games like Grand Theft Auto Online, they work underneath Proton just fine. Games like Final Fantasy XIV Online work pretty fine on the Steam Deck, on these deck devices, underneath Linux. However, when you get into games like Valorant, like Call of Duty Warzone, like Fortnite, that have a bit more stringent anti-cheat devices built into it, you are running the risk of the game just not working, or you potentially getting banned. If you want to play games like Destiny 2, Linux is not there yet, okay? It may never be, because the actual support from these developers is just not there. While, yes, anti-cheat can oftentimes be a flick of the switch, the Linux versions of these anti-cheats are oftentimes not as invasive or worthwhile for some developers as their Windows counterparts. So you may never see these things ever active on the Linux side of the system. That said, on the other hand, though, the Linux side of the system, I feel, is going to get a big boon. With the success of the Steam Deck, I think developers are really going to start noticing, publishers are really going to notice that, yeah, Linux is a pretty viable platform. People use it, people on the Steam Deck. And if other companies join the bandwagon and release similar deck-like devices with Linux running underneath it, we might actually see the year of Linux gaming truly become a thing. See, I think for most people, Linux was one of those things that was super confusing, but now that a company has made it a bit more mainstream, very accessible to use, people are easily able to jump into it and actually game, and finally be able to cut a bit of that Windows cord. Now, if you want to game and play games like Warzone on devices like this, or the actual Steam Deck, you will have to actually download Windows, image that, and install it as you would on a regular computer. And for the most part, the experience works relatively well too. However, you do run into problems. The performance hit is definitely evident, especially given the fact that the operating system is more bloated than Linux. Also, if you are on a Steam Deck, and eventually one day the SteamOS will launch and you can basically install it on any device, even a computer, with no problems whatsoever, are you still willing to give up the enhancements that Valve has made in terms of suspending the deck, in terms of downloads, in terms of file management, in terms of, just having a much cleaner operating system just to easily fire up on a portable system in game, all for the advent of running a much more confusing clusterfuck that is Windows, not properly optimized for these screens whatsoever, just to run certain games? And I think for a lot of people, they may choose to do that. A lot of people ended up buying these devices without knowing that running games with severe anti-cheats wasn't going to be possible. And I think for a lot of those people who want to play the big budget AAA multiplayer games, which there are a lot of people out there, people want to play games like Halo Infinite Online, but you're not going to be able to do that on the Linux operating system that comes with a deck or some of these devices. So you may choose to have to cut the cord and go to Windows, which basically made the entire point of this video a little bit useless. But if that's not you, and you want that Linux experience on these devices, you want to eke all the performance you can out of these budget handheld gaming PCs, this video might be for you. I think, honestly, the end slate here is that Linux has been more popularized than ever because of the Steam Deck. And because of the Steam Deck's success and the information that Valve is generating from people playing on that device, it's ultimately a net boon to Linux gamers in general, and for a lot of people who are in the market for these smaller handheld gaming PCs. Because, hey, having the choice of a faster, cleaner operating system that just gets better with time is the only thing that gives these things more life and more of an exciting factor to really jump into. That said, though, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to stop it right here. I wanted to show you guys how I made the Mutadeck. I had a good time. If you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike it if you dislike it. I am out.